Welcome to Season 3 of Time and Materials, a construction-only podcast powered by livecost.com, where we sit down with interesting people doing interesting things in construction. These construction experts kindly give us their time so that you can walk away with greater insights to make better day-to-day decisions in your construction career. Hello, you're very welcome to another episode of the Time and Materials podcast. So, the SCSI and PwC recently produced the 6th Construction Market Monitor Report, which looks at key trends in the industry. We wanted to understand what that means for our listener base, which is generally your building contractors, those operating in the trades, and it's the owner-operators and the key staff within those companies. So we wanted to understand the report. We wanted to dissect the report. We wanted to pull out pieces of that report that we felt that were going to be really valuable to you, our listener. So we asked Sinead Lew of PwC and Kevin Brady from APNA to come on and answer some of the questions we had on that report. So please sit back, enjoy, and I hope you get some value from my chat with Sinead Lew and Kevin Brady. Hello, you're very welcome to another episode of the Time Materials podcast. This week I'm joined by Sinead Lew and Kevin Brady, who are going to produce a magic ball and tell us exactly what's going to happen in our industry for the next 12 months. No pressure, Sinead and Kevin. First of all, listen, you're both very welcome to the Time Materials podcast. Thanks, firstly, for giving us your time.
Thanks, Ciaran. Thanks for having us. Great to be here.
Before we dive into the report, can we give our listeners some background? Sinead, anyone that's listened in previously will probably remember your episode on the report last year. But Kevin, I might start with you. Can you tell us just a little bit about your background and I suppose what you specialise in on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I'm a chartered quantity surveyor. I'm a director in Andrew P. Nugent Associates, or APNA, as we're known in the industry. I am immediate past chair of the QS committee within the Society of Chartered Surveyors of Ireland, and I suppose chair a lot of the working groups around the indices and various construction cost reports within the society.
Excellent. And Sinead, it's a welcome back for you, as I mentioned. We'll have to get a football in for your next appearance because you'll be on your hat trick. For those that didn't listen in last time, I suppose, would you mind giving us just a little bit about your background and what you do on a day-to-day with PwC?
Yeah, no bother at all, Ciaran. I said delighted to be back, so many thanks for the invitation. So Sinead Lew, I'm a partner in our real estate tax practice in PwC. So day to day, I'm working with construction developers, real estate companies, supporting them on tax issues, be it from kind of an ongoing trading perspective, or would work with a significant number of kind of overseas investors and kind of structuring their investments into Ireland. So very varied, work right across from PLCs down to kind of individuals. So as I said, very varied and plenty to be tackling from a broader real estate perspective, which is great.
And we got you guys here today because the SCSI and PwC have recently produced the 6th Construction Market Monitor Report. If I roll back 12 months, it's actually close to the day. I was just looking back on the date there recently. We're very close to the day that we recorded. But we wrapped up that episode. I don't know if you remember me asking, what does the next 12 months look like for the construction industry? And you answered that it was uncertainty due to the unknowns around inflation. How long will that go for? When will it peak? What will interest rates do? And the impacts of the Russia-Ukraine war. I think you also specified that it was looking positive, albeit not without challenges. But I suppose if we roll on now, we're 12 months on, what's been happening in the industry over the last 12 months? And how accurate were you with your predictions?
Oh, very, very accurate, of course. My crystal ball was bang on. I know. I think, to be honest, the last 12 months have been challenging, and really that uncertainty that we did anticipate has persisted and prevailed. And that is really, Ireland is a small open economy. And so, when you have, say, global supply chain disruptions, inflation pressures, energy volatility, that all plays out and does influence and impact what's going on here from an Irish economy and down the next level of that within the construction sector. So I think we have really seen a lot of that uncertainty, but I suppose on top of that, we have continued to have our own kind of more localized challenges, and they're not unique to Ireland, but they are definitely a feature of our industry, which is capacity and kind of labour availability of labour constraints. So we've seen all of that kind of perfect storm of issues playing out over the last 12 months. But I suppose in saying all of that, and at the risk of getting us off on a completely negative footing, I would temper it by saying there is reason for optimism, and there was a lot of positive things going on. In that, I think we've seen demand has held up. There's huge demand still for construction work and construction activity, and the market is still quite buoyant in that regard. And really, what I've seen through, as I was mentioning, I do a fair bit on the investment side, and while we have seen some softening in the level of investment, what we've probably seen is that investment just repositioning itself into other sectors. So maybe office isn't as hot as it was, but leisure, logistics, residential still still performing really well. And we've seen the sector and construction sector just its agility in moving with that and kind of dovetailing quite nicely and being able to kind of move away from maybe a huge concentration around office and moving over to support other sectors. So I think that's really positive, and it just speaks again to the resilience that the industry has continued to show despite all that's been thrown at it over, at this stage, I'd say, from the financial crisis. I don't know when we kind of say we've had issue after issue really for a long number of years.
I'd also maybe just add to that, Ciaran, as well, in terms of, we have our tender price index that was published recently for the first quarter of 2023, and that's reporting a slowdown in the rate of increase, and it's sitting at 2.4, which is down from 3.7 for the second half of last year. So the market is more competitive, and expectations for annual inflation as well will be that it will continue to soften. So that's all positive, I think, in the industry at the moment. It means we're getting more competitive prices, and the uncertainty around materials and energy prices is settling down, and hopefully that'll have a positive impact now going forward in the industry.
There was a couple of things that I just picked up on there when you just listened to that, Sinead, and that was, our office space has obviously been impacted. That's been the obvious one. But I mean, just on your side, Kevin, like, what other trends, I suppose, have you found in this year's report? Like, what else has been going on over the last 12 months?
Well, firstly, I suppose the workload expectations within the sector it remains positive, and a lot of surveyors that have responded to the report that was issued, or the survey that was issued, are showing that there is an indication of reduction in some workloads of activities, but I think that's probably depending at the time of the actual survey. Since this happened, from our perspective and from our experience, we're seeing more projects starting to come back live, which is positive. And I think from speaking with other people in the industry, that's similar. Other key trends are that 2/3 of surveyors were reporting that their firms are full capacity. That is a significant issue for the industry. That's also prevalent in other disciplines across architectural, engineering, mechanical, electrical. So that is a sustained difficulty that we need to address, and the society are working to address that.
What would be, just on that point, Kevin, what would be the typical profile of the respondent in the report? Like company size?
Well, it'd be a survey of all our chartered surveyor members, predominantly working within the construction sector, so building surveyors, quantity surveyors, etc. So that will be from our demographics. There would include professional QSs like myself, who will be working client side, in large, medium, small firms. It would also include in sole traders, surveyors, that are working for themselves. They may be pricing on the contractual side, so working with a contractor, or estimators, etc. So it will be a broad demographics that will be surveyed from the membership.
And I think here on the numbers typically show that it's surveyors in the kind of small to medium sized things, sized enterprises. Kevin is saying is where we typically get. So we kind of 300 responses, I think, for this survey. That's where the concentration typically is.
Yeah, people with their. I mean, one of the things we've seen in our day to day is just projects being put on pause, right? So a lot of people are saying, listen, we're not going to go ahead with that just yet, but they're it's not as if they're being scrapped. I would say that's my experience with being on the ground with these sort of face to face with, the project is due to literally start on such a date, and then it's just issues that are being clogged, and we're not seeing the projects being killed. I would say on our side we're seeing them being held up, and I don't know whether that's down to finance or what's going on. I mean, 12 months ago, Sinead, you highlighted that developer finance is an issue. Is that still the case today?
It is, and I'd say that is definitely, some of the reason why some projects, like you said, thankfully they're not being mothballed or such, or they're not being canned completely, but they are being postponed, because even in terms of, while there is lending still going on, it's just taking, in a lot of instances we're finding it's taking longer to get in place, because there's maybe just a number of additional points that need to be worked through in order to kind of get it across the line when you're in an environment of kind of high interest rates, high inflation, which is breeding that uncertainty that we touched upon. But certainly what the survey is showing, and what we're kind of seeing on the ground, is that sentiment has declined in terms of the availability to raise development finance, and people are finding it harder. And when we probed and we looked at the responses that the surveyors had provided, it was all around viability of projects, and issues around high interest rates impacting exit yields, which then is just making more and more projects unviable. Interestingly, though, what we are seeing is kind of a trend towards different types of structuring. So I don't know if you've forward funds and forward sales or forward purchases. These are often bandied around, and I might just take a second to explain what they are, because maybe people hear them but they don't fully know what it means. But in a forward funding scenario, essentially an investor will come in and acquire a site, a greenfield site, and they would fund the development to completion. So that's very attractive from a developer construction perspective, because it takes all of that construction risk away and that need for development finance away. So that can be quite attractive, and we're seeing more of those type arrangements in the market. Or equally, we're seeing the forward sale, forward fund, and those terms can be kind of interchangeably, whether you're buy side or sell side, which is an investor coming along and saying at the outset, I'm going to buy those completed units from you when they're completed for X amount. So that's really beneficial from the investor perspective, because they've now removed themselves from the construction risk. Obviously, the developer is still taking that on, but it enables them to go to a funder and say, well, I've locked in Ciaran to buy my 100 units for 100 million. And it's kind of unlocking a bit of development finance that way, because they have certainty that they're going to sell the units. So we're seeing an awful lot more of those type of arrangements in the market, and I don't see that trend changing anytime soon.
Oh, just with that then, like with these different, I suppose, trending finance. I mean, what I'm wrestling around my head here is the housing for all targets. That's something that was highlighted in the report. So if we have these different methods of financing these projects, how likely are we to still hit these housing for all targets?
I think the latest targets are showing, I think it's 18 and a half units have been produced in the first kind of 7 months of this year, and that's trending around 12% ahead of last year. Although, interestingly, because I was trying to look at these numbers, the comparison figure is only 6 months last year, so I don't know what that means in terms of there's a slight differential there. But in order to meet the housing for all target of 33,000 units until 2030, that would still require 14,500 units to be produced between now and the end of the year, which I think is a pretty tall order. And I think the bigger question around housing for all is really whether those targets are really reflective of the number of units that are needed. And I think there's general consensus among industry stakeholders that the number, and we've plotted this out in the report. We've tried to take account of the deficits that we're seeing year on year in terms of the number of units that are being produced versus the original targets of 33,000. And when you look at the numbers in the report, or you listen to a number of commentators around the industry, they're kind of saying it's figures really north of 40,000 or 50,000 that actually needs to be produced in order to meet demand and meet that target. So a huge amount still needs to be done there. So certainly, I don't think there's any question around demand. It comes back to kind of those fundamentals around availability of talent and inflationary pressures around that and capacity more so than I think the demand is there and that's certainly not a challenge.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would agree.
sorry, Kevin. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Ciaran, I'd agree. I think, we're down to, the finance piece might be, there's trends there that might sort the finance piece out, but when it comes down to actually delivering the units, getting the resources, getting the skilled labour, the skilled trades there to deliver them, I think that's a challenge at the moment. We're all experiencing across many of our jobs. You have different resource issues, availability of plumbers, electricians, painters, tilers, etc. So that all impacts on delivery and puts pressure on that housing for all targets.
Absolutely. I mean, that's something. Sometimes we can put our blinkers on and think that that's an Irish problem. One of the benefits we have here with live cost, what we do, the other side of our day to day, is that we get to speak to companies globally, and it's just a global issue, right? Like we speak to companies that are based in Western Australia, for example, they've got the same issues. You'd think that's a really good place to attract skilled labour. It just isn't, right? And the UK are experiencing the same. I mean, flipping that over, then Kevin, like COVID has had still very much still has a impact on the workplace. We still have a lot of companies with work from home policies. They're becoming stronger and stronger. I think even in our own experience, a lot of new employees are actually wanted to know what the work from home policy looks like before they even accepting any new employment opportunities. So like that's gotta have an effect on the commercial construction. I mean, what are you seeing there?
Yeah, I think that from an employee perspective, the COVID, the impacts around COVID on the workplace has been positive for them. I mean, they have greater flexibilities, and now most meetings around projects are either online or remote. So that has benefits to it. I think from an employer's perspective, the construction sector is a very collaborative one where relationships are required to be built. And I think the online remote working has affected that. And I think, obviously the commercial sector has and office works have kind of died down or a bit subdued at the moment. But I think we have, as Sinead mentioned earlier, there's agility within the market that has transferred over to different sectors like the residential sector and the retrofits and whatnot. So I think there's a bit of movement around that. But I think from an employer perspective, we need to probably get people back into the offices, get into to meetings and sites and whatnot, which in turn hopefully will maybe change the office market again in the future.
Yeah, I'd completely echo that as well in terms of, I think fundamentally we're never going to move away from a HQ and the need to have that. But I think more broadly then to Kevin's point, like you can't beat in-person collaboration. And I think like hybrid is absolutely here to stay and it has its benefits. And I think all of us probably benefit from that in ways that we didn't even think were possible pre-COVID. But at the same time, I think we're starting to see a trend from an employer perspective back towards the office to a slightly greater extent. It's never going to go back to the way it was. But I think the office is absolutely kind of here to stay. But I think we're also seeing other kind of interesting trends. We had the first kind of repurposing of an office. I think that happened there not too far from me over at East Point and stuff. So like that's what I think is really exciting about the industry as well, is all of this there's a constant evolution going on. So I think there's a lot more to see from that perspective as well. And as Kevin said, retrofitting, like there's loads to come, but I do think the office still is firmly has its place, and that won't totally change.
The resilient market, there's no question. I mean, COVID highlighted that. So there's definitely resilience built into this industry. There's absolutely no question. And one thing you touched on there, Kevin,
the careers in construction action plan that the government released. Hopefully, that will allow more tradespeople to enter into the sector to achieve them targets by 2030. And I think the focus would need to be on all the areas, but certainly on mechanical, electrical trades would need to be focused to ensure that there's personnel there that we can deliver them targets numbers from the government.
I think the grants one is a key one, and we kind of included some sample commentary from some of the respondents, and that was a key focus area in this whole area of retrofitting was grant support. And I think even from my own perspective, like we would track in PwC kind of green taxes and incentives from a global perspective, and Ireland really is an outlier in terms of the current level of grants or maybe the lack of kind of incentives that are there. And I think until people are appropriately kind of incentivized, that they certainly won't be too minded to do it. But then to Kevin's point, we have to equally make sure we have the people there to do it. So it is a bit of a kind of a dual track that we need to probably crack the nut on in order to get this off the ground in a big, much larger scale than it is at present.
Must come up in every episode, the whole apprentice thing. Like, there's no question we need to do more. And I just, one thing, I think we had Connor Walsh on, who actually specialises in retrofitting with his company Encon on the last episode, and we spoke about this in depth. Is like, apprenticeship models are generally, people would think, well, maybe I don't want to become a carpenter, plumber, electrical, but what we're forgetting about is that can just be the step into another thing. Like, for example, I'm a carpenter by trade, but today I don't hang doors and put skirting on walls, but it is giving me a platform to go into other areas of construction. I don't think there's enough of narrative put on the opportunity that it can create you into construction, and having that sort of day-to-day experience of what happens on site is invaluable, absolutely invaluable. And I just think there could be a much better push to say, well, this could be a really good starting point for your career, and then you can go on to do, like, Connor's specialising in retrofitting, I'm doing construction technology. It's just a platform, right? But what it can do for us is it can get at a lot of people into the trades. So it's an attractive model. You're making money on day one. You can't get that in college, and it's giving you career opportunities to go into other areas. It also gives you a passport to go and travel, which, I've travelled as a apprentice coming out of my time. I went straight abroad, and I realised the value of that apprenticeship as well. I just don't think we do enough here to actually go and push to allow people to say, I think there's a narrative that says you're going to work this trade and then be a part of the trade for the rest of your career, which is just inaccurate, right? It's not that. It's a platform. It's going to put you 4 years in a paid model. It's going to help us deliver this housing for scheme. It's going to do so much more benefits to I think that we could get behind apprenticeships by just switching the narrative slightly. Anyway, that's my little rant on apprentices. So with the retrofit scheme, I think it's a great scheme. I agree with you, Sinead. I just don't think there's enough incentive for the homeowner. I don't think that's there yet. I don't think there's enough. I don't think the homeowner has enough of a, okay, I'm going to do this. This makes a ton of sense to me now as a homeowner. Let's go and do this. And yeah, I think that we definitely need to start thinking about that.
But I think even from an industry perspective, we've obviously touched on inflation and high interest rates, but that's being felt by all of us day to day. So you have homeowners who are in that environment with increasing mortgage rates. So then asking them to try and fund a retrofit, at the minute they're going to need to be incentivised, be it a grant or something like that, or other tax relief to enable them to actually just be able to afford to do it.
I think also probably the benefits of the retrofit. Probably people in construction understand that you replace your boiler with a heat pump and you upgrade your insulation, you're going to get benefits out of that. But to the layperson, they may not fully understand and grasp that. And people will look at how much is it saving me? How much is my energy bill going to go down by? How much is my heating bill going to go down by? And I think that probably needs to be focused on and made very clear, because we're not all in the construction industry and may not understand all the terminology within these new energy systems that are coming out to be implemented. So it all comes down to what is the benefit of putting it in, and the benefit will be that it reduces your energy uses, and to what order of cost that does. And as you say, Sinead, then that might assist, I suppose, in getting it with a grant and getting some of them targets met, I suppose, by 2030.
Is there something out there, Kevin? Maybe I'm not as tuned into the retrofitting side, but is there something out there that says that for a standard homeowner, I'm going to put, 20 grand, 30 grand into a retrofit in my own existing property. And for that 30 grand, I should expect to see X amount of savings on an annual basis, which will give me a return on that 30 grand over, 5 years, 6 years, whatever the case might be. I mean, is there anything out there that homeowners could go to see what the effect of investing in that might be?
Yeah, I see there's energy audit reports that can be done that will identify, it'll be an analysis of the actual house and the measures that may be able to be applied, and then it takes account of your energy use at the moment. So the specific details can be provided that can then estimate a potential potential cost saving in energy use. But I think predominantly from my experience, that's would be more implemented on, say, the larger commercial projects. But I think it is available there, and maybe that's a space that people need to be looking to offer a new service, maybe.
Business opportunity there, creating these business opportunities.
Yeah.
Someone listen in, make sure you send that commission in here, please. Sinead, I'm going to put you back on the spot. It seems you've done such a great job 12 months ago to tell us what's going to happen. So from where we are now, I suppose, what do you see? What's the outlook, I suppose, for the next 12 months ahead?
Mystic Meg. But I think, to be honest, it's definitely more positive. In the survey, we saw a slight dip in terms of sentiment. Positivity was slightly down, but to Kevin's point, the survey was probably done in February of this year, and I think what we have seen, as Kevin outlined, is probably, be it inflation and energy prices starting to trend back towards more normalised levels, or at least the stark increases are no longer being seen. So I think that's a definite positive, and I'd like to think that if we kind of ran the survey today, we would have a slightly more positive outlook than we had. So I think definitely, like, a lot of reason for optimism. The point I was making around, there's certainly no issue around demand or any amount of work, I think, there for people within the industry. But it's back to all the points that we've been touching upon today, and Kevin mentioned around, having the people there to actually do the work, and trying to get a handle on development finance challenges that are there. They're I think the two main kind of more localized issues. I think all the stuff that was probably impacting us from a macroeconomic level, it's not that it's gone away, it's just softened in a positive way. But we do unfortunately still have our own challenges, not unique to Ireland necessarily, but very localized at the minute, that we need to really double down our efforts in trying to address, I think, to really unlock a lot of additional capacity that is very much needed.
I think, Ciaran, there is certain things that are on the horizon around concrete levies and whatnot. If the war continues as well, there may be impacts on supply chain. So we're in kind of a challenging area at the moment, albeit it's positive. But there is some still unknowns really out there currently.
Just on that then, Kevin, like what has the war, Brexit? You mentioned material fluctuation, which is something we definitely have to mention. What's been the impact of that on the industry?
I think obviously Brexit came in. It's hard to differentiate say price increases into whether it's Brexit or whether it's energy price of inflation, etc., and COVID related, etc. So it's difficult to package them into a box to say Brexit costs us X and COVID costs us Y. But I think it has been a difficult time. Obviously, the monetary impact of Brexit and COVID hitting kind of predominantly nearly at the same time has meant that there's been additional expenditure on implementing new administrative processes and procedures to deal with the Brexit side of things, and equally on the government side and industry, we've had to spend money to put in place them functions and to manage that new border, etc., and the new controls around that. But I think in terms of the price increases, material price increases in the war, I mean, we rely, Ireland as a country rely on a lot of outside countries to import their construction materials. We don't tend to manufacture a lot in Ireland, so that has significantly impacted us. And we're not the largest country either, so in comparison to some of the other European unions, so we're automatically going to be hit with the price increases that are being experienced around the insulation, the energy coming from Central Europe, etc. as well. So I think it has impacted the industry. I think we've responded relatively well. Still, the industry is still, very active. We're very busy within the industry, albeit there's maybe pockets of the industry that, as you mentioned previously, projects might have been put on hold or paused, but other sectors or other parts of the sector have continued to grow. You're talking the high-tech sector, the data centers, and then the residential as well is busy. So I think it has impacted us as an industry, but I think we're dealing okay with it at the moment, and hopefully, as Sinead mentioned, we'll return to maybe more normalised increase figures prior to COVID.
Are we through the worst of it?
I'll answer them first, I suppose, but I think it's difficult to say. I think there's still some challenges there. I think we're probably through the worst of it in terms of material prices. But listen, that could flare up again depending on what happens in Central Europe and with the war and energy prices. I think the big issue that we've already kind of discussed, the resourcing of that. That's a slow burn to fix. So that's more of a challenge. And then some of the other industry related things like the concrete levy that we mentioned, items like that coming into play may affect things. But I think broadly we've weathered maybe the storm around the Brexit and COVID. It's been tough, but I think we're back on our feet, and the industry is firing on all cylinders at the moment, albeit there's some chinks in the armour that still need to be sorted out.
What is the latest on this, on the concrete levy?
The latest on the concrete levy, I'm not too sure now, Ciaran, actually, so I'm not. You might cut this bit out. Actually, I've been following it a little bit. I know there's calls for it to be changed and limiting precast, removal of precast from the levy. So there's probably still a little bit of uncertainty around what it is, how it is, and how it's going to affect, and what the overriding result might be in terms of a 10% down to 5% levy, and what that physically applies to and how it's actually implemented. So it's probably a little bit uncertain at the moment still as to how that will impact us, if it will be put in place. I don't know, Sinead, if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, no, I think the expectation is that it's due to go live in September, and we haven't heard anything to the contrary that it won't. But I suppose we are, and with my tax hat on, we are firmly in budget 2024 territory. So certainly no suggestion that or certainly no hints that there's going to be any changes, but that certainly is a period of time where you typically see change around, be it the concrete block levy, or residential zoned land tax is another key challenge for the sector. Anybody in that kind of resi sector, that's due to go live next year, which would be a 3% tax on the market value of land if you essentially undeveloped land, if you're on a local authority plan. So we are hoping maybe to see some movement around things in budget 2024, but this is in no shape or form any sort of spoiler or anything like that, because I'm sure I've absolutely no visibility of what's in it. But I would say watch this space, and I certainly think the industry would welcome some changes around certainly both of those initiatives would be most welcome, I think it's fair to say.
Excellent. We will link up the report, of course, in the show notes for anyone that wants to dig into the full details. We do a thing on the podcast as well where we jump into what we call a key three. One of those questions is around experience on site as well, and working with apprentices and all that type of stuff, which we'll avoid for this episode. But what we do like to understand is try and give a bit of value back to listeners is, and I'll start with you, Sinead. Well, like, what's the best piece of business/career advice that you've ever received?
Oh gosh, I'd say the best bit of advice I've received is probably to step outside your comfort zone, and do things like podcasts that you wouldn't normally do in your day to day, because that's probably where it leads to a lot of unknown opportunities potentially, and you get to meet new people, and that kind of picks up on the point I think that Kevin made earlier really well around the importance of kind of your network within the construction sector. So I think that's the best bit of advice I got is probably step outside your comfort zone, push yourself to do things outside of maybe your day to day, because that's how you're going to build your network and ultimately learn and develop yourself. And then you don't know kind of what opportunities may come of it. Like I said, opportunity to be back with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. And on your side, Kevin, do you have a piece of? I mean, you've managed to scale the construction career ladder quite well. I mean, you've got a piece of advice that you would share.
No, I think it's just to get engaged with people. I mean, a lot of people can sit back and just do their day to day, and I think to get more involved in things. As Sinead mentioned, podcast, more industry insights, stuff like that. That I found very beneficial. Just being involved within the society, being an active member there. Looking at at cost reports, branching out into different sectors where we're currently in the office. We provide different consultancy services that may not have been about previously. So I think you need to put yourself out of your comfort zone, as Sinead mentioned. I'd wholeheartedly agree with that.
It's interesting that you both touched on the importance of people and being around people and building relationships with people. And I was listening to another podcast with a very successful CEO actually based in Australia, and one of his comments which stuck with me, was he's given career advice to young people that are sort of coming out of grads, and he's saying, like, if you want a job, go and find a job, work from home, makes a ton of sense. But if you want a career, get yourself into an office. It's the only way you're going to build a career, is by surrounding yourself with people that have done it, being there before you. You can watch and learn. So it's interesting as we talk about the shift in commercial. Will it flip back to more so the way it is, because people just won't get the same experience from work from home? It'll be an interesting trend, I think, to follow that one over the next sort of 4 to 5 years. One other one that we like to sort of play around with is that it's a fast changing industry, but everyone has an opinion on how construction should work. And I suppose if you had no resource constraint, Kevin, I'll put this to you. Like, is there anything that you would like to change with the industry?
Yeah, it's a difficult question, Ciaran. I think I'd like to see us deliver projects in a more efficient manner. I would say efficient manner, quicker timescales. We have key infrastructural projects, national construction projects, all that will go to meet, say, certain targets. Like we were talking about the retrofit scheme, the housing for all. We have, other hospital projects as well. I'd like to see, if we didn't have any resource constraints, could we actually embark on them and actually deliver them, and increase that, and maybe eradicate, say, the housing supply, the housing crisis as such. Maybe solve some other things. There's a lot of new methods of constructing out there, modern methods of construction, off-site, different things like that. Could we put resource into that to maybe speed up projects, deliver more projects, and become maybe more efficient overall in the industry? So I'd like to see if we did have, end resource. I think also just there's, we have BIM, we have different products that are there that are being used at the moment, but are they being used at their fullest capacity is the question. Is it being implemented on all projects? Again, to speed projects up and have more value for money maybe at the end of the projects. So I think from that perspective, I'd like to see us maybe invest more towards them deliveries, target deliveries, and maybe look to mainland Europe and some of the other countries across the world to see how do they do, how do they perform their roles, how do they deliver plans within programs, and see if we had no resource issues, could we mirror that here? Because there's a lot of spend in Ireland. But you hear it day in, day out, projects aren't being delivered on time, which is obviously a multifaceted kind of factors associated with that. But obviously resources being one. So I'd like to see if we had no resource constraints, that's what we try and maybe solve some of the outstanding problems, historic outstanding problems within the state.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I suppose to fill the gap on the live cost key three, someone actually asked me during the week my own thoughts on that question, which was obviously if you had no resource constraints, like what would you change? I mean, we'll probably use this as a time just to my one element of this industry that I just can't stand is the lack of protection around the subcontractor and how QS can determine whether a subcontractor can get paid on a project. And I suppose worse again, how a QS can be put under severe pressure from above, from a cash flow point of view. So the company can put pressure on a QS from a cash flow point of view to basically say, let's squeeze the subcontractor, and that can send 40, 50 jobs out overnight. To cancer, in absolute cancer in the industry. And if I could change one thing, it would be more protection around that subcontractor, making sure that they get paid for work they've done. That would be my two cents on that. Sinead, anything to add on the change in the industry side?
Probably more just echoing what's been said, but really around, I think often, something that can hold us back from a lot of innovation, and be it technology adoption or those modern methods of construction, is often said we don't have the scale, or the size of the market, or the cost is the constraining factor. So I'd love to see that taken away, whereby, and Kevin, is the point that you were making, that we kind of had a bit more free reign to kind of let people explore and really try and revolutionize things, or really get a whole lot of innovation happening in the industry. I think off the back of Brexit, but really COVID, we started to see that that acted as a major catalyst towards technology adoption, or just different ways of working. And I'd love to see more of that continuing. But I do think, because our market is so fragmented and we have a number of significant number of smaller players, cost, or the ability to actually make that investment, is a key constraint. And I'd love to see that fall away, because I think Ireland, by its very nature, is a creative place. It's full of entrepreneurs in multiple sectors, and I'd love to see more of that happening in the construction space.
If anyone wants to reach out to you guys, learn a bit more about yourselves or the report itself, where could they find you?
Well, you'll find me on PwC.ie, or I think I'm double checking it. I think I'm on the back of the report as maybe one of the key contacts. So that's where you'll find me.
And for me, you'll find me on APNA.ie or